Okay, this one may sound a little evil, but we're gonna do a tier ranking of all the Hashira backstories to see which one is the absolute saddest and which one is actually not that sad. For example, between Mitsuri and Kyojuro Rengoku, which one of the two had the saddest backstory? Well, that'd be Mitsuri. Yes, her story of rejection after rejection is sad, but it's okay, because those blokes were never meant for her anyway. She needed a real one like Obanai, and we all know how their story ends. Not even death could do them part. So with this in mind, Mitsuri's backstory, while sad, is less tragic when compared to all the other Hashira because, unlike them, she didn't have to deal with any permanent loss. Still though, it definitely hits hard, and it's also quite relatable, because we've all experienced rejection at some point, haven't we? Overall, to kickstart this sad tournament ranking, we're giving the 9th spot to the Love Hashira. Of course, if Mitsuri is 9th, then Kyojuro is 8th, the Flame Hashira. He has to deal with a toxic household because of his father's depression, which was a direct result of his mother's death. Not only did Kyojuro have to cope with the loss of his mother, he also had to deal with his father's emotional abuse. For someone from such a prideful family to have to watch his father go from the greatest Hashira of the century into a drunkard must be insanely painful. He also had to play the father figure role for his little brother, all the while living his life in a way that make his mother proud. He died without being able to gain his father's respect. But we still have him at number 8 because Demon Slayer as a whole is simply full of tragedies. Together, both Mitsuri and Kyojuro belong to tier C when it comes to the saddest Hashira backstories. Moving on to number 7, this spot goes to Shinobu, the insect Hashira, and this is where it gets real. Shinobu lost all of her biological family members to demons, even her sister who was a Hashira herself. When she was just a child, her parents were killed by demons right before her and her sister's eyes. Guillaume saved them, and they set foot on the path to becoming demon slayers and eventually avenge their parents. But then Shinobu's sister Kanai, her only family left, was killed by Doma. This was tragic enough to put Shinobu in a state of permanent anger. Yet she couldn't even show her emotions. She had to put on a fake mask of smiley happiness every day. From that point onward, Shinobu was never the same. However, the reason we're still ranking her so low on the list is because while her trauma was definitely real, what happened to the others in the same tier as her was powerful enough to pretty much alter their brain chemistry. At number 6, we have Moichiro, the Mist Hashira. When he was 10, his mother caught bronchitis and died while his father was away to get medicine for her. Sadly, his father also died after falling from a cliff. Moichiro and his brother were left all alone and struggled to survive. His brother also developed an aggressive personality to deal with it all. But one day, he was fatally wounded by a demon. Moichiro lost it and attacked the demon, somehow managed to kill it, but between the rage and his brother's dying words, he was simply unable to cope. His brain blocked his memories and became an emotionless dude. What's even more depressing is that he only managed to realize how his brother truly felt about him as he was literally dying. Typical demon slayer. The amnesia was a coping mechanism for the grief he had to endure at such a young age. Shinobu used her hatred to keep herself sane, but Moichiro simply couldn't. He lost it. Still, I wouldn't put Moichiro above Giyu. Yup, at number 5, we have the Water Hashira. The difference between his backstory and the backstories of Moichiro and Shinobu is that it involved guilt. His older sister sacrificed herself to protect him from demons the day before her wedding. He tried to tell the villagers about the demon that killed his sister, but nobody believed him. He was literally labeled mentally ill. This alone was traumatic enough to leave Giyu isolated and misunderstood. After all that, he finally connected with someone and found a best friend in Sabito. But then during the final selection, his best friend died. This just filled Giyu with even more survivor's guilt. As Tanjiro said, Giyu thinks that his death would be a good thing. Even after he became the Water Hashira, he couldn't shake off the feeling that it should have been him who died, not Sabito. The traumatic death of his sister, rejection he faced from others, guilt from Sabito's death, it all turned into a stoic mask on his face. He blamed himself for what happened. This is why, although Shinobu, Moichiro, and Giyu all belong in Tier B, Giyu's backstory is the saddest. Next, at number 4, we have Tengen, the Sound Hashira. What Tengen experienced is more tragic than what happened to Giyu because he literally did it himself. First, he saw his siblings die because of their brutal training, and then when the rest of them were unknowingly pitted against each other, Tengen killed 2 of his brothers. The real tragedy is that even after all of this, he had to stay with the clan. He was still in their clutches. It wasn't until age 15 that he left the village with his wives. Now, the very fact that he couldn't kill his father and his only brother in the end is because he's not a monster like them. He was a human, and although he may have fooled us with his flashy appearance and personality, he never forgot about the 2 brothers he killed with his own hands. If we had seen more from him, we would have gotten a scene like the one where Kakashi from Naruto tries to wash the blood off his hands, but it doesn't go away. Okay, so Tengen is in tier A, but there's another Hashira who's also in the same tier. At number 3, it's gotta be Gyome, the Stone Hashira. He was born blind, and considering how he lived with 9 orphans in an old temple, it's all but confirmed he had already lost his biological family. Still, he worked hard to make sure all of the children could eat, even if he himself had to go to bed hungry. Then one night, when Kaigaku betrayed them and allowed a demon into the temple, 4 of the other 8 kids were immediately killed. Gyome tried to protect the others, but they ignored him and tried to escape. They were killed by the demon. Ultimately, he was able to protect one little girl named Sayo by killing the demon with his bare hands. When the villagers came, they misunderstood Sayo's words and put him on a death trial for manslaughter. He was accused of murdering all the children that he protected. The real tragedy of it all is how he also misunderstood Sayo's words. Gyome has always had the heart of a giant, but he was always wronged by others. Dude, people even threw stones at him even though he's blind. But he still never thought ill of Sayo or the kids who tried to run away. Yes, even after all this, Gyome was able to preserve his faith and his gentle BFG nature. The combination of losing the kids, the feeling of betrayal, and the resilience that helped him to accept everything as is. Much like a stone that gets shaped by the relentless rivers, Gyome has truly been through a lot. We're putting him in tier A with Tengen. Finally, we have tier S and the 2 besties left. Who ranks second and who ranks first? Honestly, it's really close, but I'd say that at number 2, we have Sanemi, the Wind Hashira. As the eldest one of 7 siblings, he grew up in an abusive household with a toxic clown of a father who'd hit and abuse his mother and his siblings for no reason. When his father died, it was a breath of relief because now things would get better. Together with Genya, he resolves to protect his younger siblings and support his mother. But the worst had yet to come. One night, his mother was turned into a demon, and it made her kill every single one of his siblings except Genya. She was also going to kill Genya, but Sanemi had to kill his mother with his own 2 hands in order to protect his last family member. He had to choose. When the sun began to come out, Sanemi was still speechless at what had happened. He was still in the middle of processing all these tragedies when Genya called him a murderer for killing their mother. And after all this, Sanemi also lost Kumino and Kanai, his best friend and the woman he loved. However, even with this, I'd say the winner of the saddest Hashira backstories tournament is Obanai. Now, Obanai's backstory is just straight up twisted. At least the other Hashira had someone. He had nobody except his little snake fella, Kaburamaru. When he was born, his birth was celebrated, but for all the wrong reasons. He was the first male child in a clan of thieves that worshipped the serpent demon. Ordinarily, the clan just gives newborn babies to the demon as sacrifices, but Obanai was special because it had been 370 years since a male child was born. He was kept in a cage and raised like cattle. Much like the kids from the Promised Neverland, he was being raised to be the perfect meal. He especially felt frightened by the serpent demon because she'd just slither around his cage when it was dark at night. It wasn't until age 12 that he was taken out of the cage and was able to actually see the serpent demon. One look, and he knew that this was the same thing that had been slithering around his cage every night since he was born. Though before Obanai could realize what's going on, the serpent demon orders his face to be disfigured by slitting his mouth in a way that matches hers. It happened while he was still conscious, and she then drinks all the blood that dripped from his face. He's then imprisoned again, but he starts plotting his escape after becoming friends with Kaburamaru. He escapes, but the serpent demon catches up to him. Fortunately, Shinjuro, Kyojoro's father, pulled up and saved him. Honestly, I love this little connection in the story. The former Flame Hashira saved Obanai and his only surviving family, his older cousin. Everyone else died. And if it literally couldn't have gotten any worse, the cousin who survived blamed him for all of their deaths, because if he had just stayed in the cage, they wouldn't have been killed by the demon. Ridiculous. At least the other Hashira had some semblance of a normal life, but for Obanai, every single day and night, he was treated like an animal. But sometimes, fate works in strange ways, because when Mitsuri entered his life, Obanai slowly began to feel normal. Overall, I'm putting both Obanai and Sanemi's backstories in tier S. If you're still in the mood to cry, watch these 2 videos on the saddest facts in Demon Slayer. That'll guarantee to make you sob.